Welcome officially, tishally, to the post-election safety plan webinar, hangout, Kiki,
All the things.
all the things. It's all the things because today feels like it's all the things for so many of us in different ways. Some of you know who we are. Some of you are new friends who have heard about this from other people in our extended community. And so I will introduce myself, giving AnaYelsi the opportunity to do the same by invitation. But I am Alicia T. Crosby. I am a justice educator, facilitator, minister, human, user of she, her pronouns, located in North Carolina, who I'm here because I'm a seminarian. That's kind of it in a nutshell of who I am. AnaYelsi, who are you?
Hey y'all, I'm AnaYelsi. I'm in DC. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I'm an artist, I'm a writer, I'm someone who calls Alicia family and co-conspirator and friend and teacher. So we love to do this sort of work together. We find a lot of joy in it together, and we hope that it brings some joy in the midst of everything that is happening for all of us. Who I am, I'm someone who likes to bring the arts to the justice work that we do, who likes to incorporate healing into the way we do this stuff. I'm really passionate about trying to be more creative about the ways that we can imagine being free and getting free, and making sure that it's a collective process, that it's a community process, and that we're not out here doing it on our own. And so tonight is another way to have the conversation about how do we do this together? How do we do this in conjunto?
And this encontoness, this community, this family is what leads us to have this conversation tonight. What we're doing with and alongside all of you is what we've done with and alongside one another. That's, I think, something that's really integral to just AnaYelsi and I and how we approach the world. We're never willing to do in the community what we don't do for ourselves. And so we were having conversations about, the election and anxieties that we had and that others had, and what the world looks like regardless of who's elected in the US elections that are taking place on today, November the 3rd, because some of you will be watching this afterwards. And we're like, you know what, no matter, who is in office, there are things that we have to do to be well and to be safe and to care for one another. And so that's part of what we want to talk about tonight. We found, just in the conversations that we were looking at in other places, like online and in activist and organizing spaces, that there's a lot of people saying, do this, do that, do this, do that, but they weren't really explaining how. They weren't slowing down enough to talk about particulars and maybe some of the challenges that people might face in working to be as well as possible in the world after November 3rd. And so we wanted to take, a few minutes, in a few minutes it's probably going to be closer to an hour, to talk about the hows. Because we know that the only way that we make it is if we prioritize self-care and wellness. And when I say self-care, I don't mean that capitalistic, like, let me buy this program for $19.99 and it tells me a checklist of what I can do. It's like, no, what does it mean to consider what my needs are? What are the needs of the people around me? What are our resources? And then how do we extend those resources to one another for the sake of us to be well, to be as healthy as possible? In the context that we're living in. And to develop some strategies, some basic strategies. And so tonight, you can anticipate that we are gonna help you think a little bit through what's happening in the world around you and maybe what your situation might require, and what can be done to help lessen some of the anxieties or other complicated feelings that you might be holding right now. I think it is a good way of jumping off is to remind yourself to pause and breathe. I actually created a little board that is backwards, but you can see it is. Take a deep breath. If I would have thought about this, I would have mirrored it, but you know.
No, it's perfect. I can.
Oh.
Wait, no. Can they see it right? I can see it right. Yeah.
Oh, well, I see it wrong, and that's okay. If you see it right, that's all that matters. But take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Just in, out. AnaYelsi is going to take you through an exercise. But today is not the last day of anything. For some of us, honestly, it's going to be the first day that we dig in a little bit differently. Words are hard. It is nighttime on the East Coast. That said, I will hand it over to AnaYelsi to share what she's going to share.
Yeah. So this pause and breathe, the language that Alicia just used, we wanted to, instead of just telling you that you should try incorporating some grounding exercises, or that you should try doing some meditation, or that you should be pausing and breathing, we thought we would actually do a really quick one with you so that we could experience it together. It'll just take a few minutes, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty. How do we do all the safety work together? How do we deal with our anxiety? Because one of the ways you deal with your anxiety is grounding yourself, and it's taking a moment. So I'm doing some work right now with some staff and faculty in North Carolina, and this is one of the exercises that I did with them this week or this past week, and I've adapted it a bit for our purposes right now. So if you have any kind of pencils, paper, a pen, a Post-it, a piece of cardboard, I don't care. Something that you can write with and something that you can write on. It can be your thigh, but a place that you can write. There you go. We're gonna make a little something together for this exercise that I call mapping the truth. Everything we need is here. And the reason we're going to do this is a lot of what we're going to talk about is our fears and our anxieties and how we're going to meet those needs. And one of the first things that's really important to do is to remind ourselves of how much we already have available to us, how many ways our needs already could be met, are being met, what is open and available within our community, from our family, from our friends, from within ourselves. And so we're going to do this mapping the truth. Everything we need is here. So we're going to make a little map. And your map can be any shape you want it to be, something that brings you joy. So maybe a star, a heart, Idris Elba's face. I don't know. What makes you smile? What are you going to do, Alicia?
I have to think about this. Like, you've given me options.
Okay.
It's like, I'm going to make a map of all the things. So
Okay.
the star map of Idris Elba's face.
Oh, all right. What am I going to do? I'm going to go simple. I'm going to go with a heart balloon. So I'm drawing a heart balloon. And if you're at home, just draw some shape that gives you a little bit of joy. And then I want you to take a moment, and in your map, whatever shape your map is, you're going to consider who you are, and you're going to consider where you come from and the people you live your life with, the people you do your work with, the people you turn to when you want to accomplish something, whether it's justice work, it's movement work, it's the day-to-day things that you're looking to get done. Who do you come from? Who do you do your work with? And put a few names in your map. For example, I would put Alicia in my map because she's one of the people I always turn to. Go ahead and put a few names in your map of your people that you do the work with. And that doesn't mean you are someone who necessarily does social justice work every day, but maybe you're a teacher and you're doing the work there. You're a nurse. You work in a grocery store. some place where you're trying to get something accomplished. And think about the people who came before you, who tried to get similar things accomplished, who did similar work, who laid some of the foundation for you, who maybe made it a little bit easier, a little bit more possible, and put a few of their names. And who taught you to do this stuff? Taught you to care about it, to want to do something about it, to be able to do something about it? Who gave you the skills? Created a path for you? Put some of their names. Just saw that Kathy joined us. Hello, Kathy. We're doing a grounding exercise right now.
Hey, Kathy.
We're just drawing a little map, any shape you want, and we're putting some information in it. You can follow along. Next, you're going to put in some examples of places that you consider holy ground or spots of resistance for you. Places that are very significant. And we're going to do 2 more. Where are your people? So maybe they're not doing the same work. Maybe they're not the ones who taught you, but these are your people. They're your folks. You draw comfort from them. You have joy with them. They're your people, however you define that. Who are they? Where are they? And then as you're writing that, the last one is, where are your places of safety or your places of rest? Where can you go and just pause and breathe, like we named earlier, where you can just be yourself and it's not about the work and it's just about you being you and getting to have a moment and exhale. Where you get to bring all of yourself. Where are those places? Safety and rest. Oh, Kristen, I'm glad to hear that. Kristen said that she didn't know how much she needed this.
Oh,
I'm
we're
really glad
glad
it's
you're
here now.
here. We're glad you're here and grateful you could make it.
All right. So you can keep adding to that. There might be questions I didn't name. Alicia, can you think of one that I didn't ask that you would love to see in your map?
Mm-hmm.
Or if anyone else can think of one and wants to put it in the chat.
I don't know 100% if we've kind of talked around this one, but like, who do you do it for?
I love that.
Like when you think about you're showing up and you're holding on and you're pushing through to get from one day to the next, who do you do it for?
You do it for.
And this could be individuals, this could be groups of people. This could be the universe, it could be God. Yeah.
Who do you do it for? All right. I'm going to pause us there because we have so much to get through. But can I see yours? Are you willing to show it?
Yes.
I'll show
So
you.
let me see yours.
It's my heart and a balloon.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So I started with a squiggle and then it became like a close up of an ice cream cone.
Oh, I love.
I think I want ice cream right now, y'all. But I just want to note that there are sprinkles in different places, but my cherry on top is Alexis, my fiance.
Aww.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realized I wrote Matt 3 times for different things, my husband. So the idea is you can keep adding to this. You can do it at different times. You can put it up someplace. If you need to be reminded of what you already have available to you, of how much you have to draw strength from, to draw comfort from, that you already have access to. So there's something there to ground yourself in, that reminder that you can map it out and have a visual of what community is offering you.
And the community is expansive.
Yes. Kenya said hers is also an ice cream cone.
Yeah, they're super.
Okay, sorry.
We are on one accord. This is why you're one of my boos, Kenya. But remember that community isn't just a community that is here, you know, in this realm right now. You know, with it being early November, we just, you know, passed All Saints Day, Dia de los Muertos. Like, this is a time of year where we just were reflecting on our ancestors, the people who've gone before us. And, you know, kind of at my base that undergirded, you know, my parents on my cone, like I put my, you know, my grandparents and great grandparents, because like when I think about like, you know, those anchors, like I'm here because of what they did. And so it's okay for you to extend your community beyond like the folks who are here with you presently, in terms of like, you know, tangibly in like in this way, because like our ancestors are still with us.
Absolutely. I have several who I've never even met, but just are have been teachers through their written word to me, through their work. All right, with that, I want to pass it to you to take us into our next part.
So part of the reason why, you know, we did this mapping is because, you know, you got to know who your people are to understand, like, you know, what it is that you're going to do moving forward. Because like when we talk about safety and protection and security, it involves your community, past and present. And so this little segment of our conversation is taking action and connecting with community. And so we're going to take you through, you know, different waves of this. But the first thing we're going to start off is like what you need to be doing at home. And I've been thinking a lot about this recently in like different conversations I've been having. And I realize part of the reason why we're so anxious sometimes is because we haven't stopped, right? We haven't stopped to do that community mapping. We haven't identified who our people are. And because that's the case, we haven't necessarily identified things like our needs. Or if we've identified our needs, we haven't identified our commitments. And so one thing, you know, and this is like a thing that I do personally for grounding, you know, your community involves you. It starts with you in many respects. And if you're comfortable, I will show you a very quick thing that I do that helps me walk through some questions with myself. So take your hand. AnaYelsi is going to model if she feels. Put it over your heart. Take a deep breath. And ask, what do I need? What am I feeling?
Should I verbally do it?
You don't have to. You can if you want.
What do I need? What am I feeling?
That quick check-in can like literally save your life. I had a situation that arose a few years ago where I was in the middle of running around. It was actually shortly after the 2016 election. And I am convinced by me putting my hand on my heart, taking a deep breath and asking myself, what did I need? I put myself in a position to be well and to not be in the realm of the ancestors because I ended up being really, really sick. And check-ins are a thing that we oftentimes don't do with others, but it's because we haven't learned to do those things with ourselves. Yeah. And so when you're thinking about, you know, do an inventory, the first thing you need to ask is about needs, and putting your hand over on your chest, taking that breath and asking, what do I need in this moment? Could be a good way to start. Yeah. But commitments are a thing too. What is it that I believe in? What am I, you know, willing to do or not do for the sake of what I believe in? Who or what is threatening me? That's real. When we are, you know, in a place where we're anxious, it's because there is a perceived or realized threat that's present. And so identifying like what those threats are is important because that'll help you sometimes determine like, you know, what your needs and how you need to activate those commitments. What skills and resources do I have? And, you know, starting with this, you know, round of questions, you can extend that now to asking these things of your family. You can sit and talk to, you know, those who are in your household or the family who like is a part of the decision-making of like the collective of folks you belong with, and ask, what are our needs, right? What are our commitments? Like, what are the things we're willing to do together? Who or what is threatening us? So AnaYelsi shared, and it's, you know, something that I echo, like we're family, but the threats that, you know, come for her are not necessarily the same ones that come for me because we have different identities and we live in different places. But what our commitments are going to be is shaped by the threats and what our needs are. Like all these things are like interlocked. They're all like, you know, there together. They're all weaving in and out. And when you're asking like these questions, you get to a place where you start talking about capacity, and you ask yourself and you ask the people who you're in community with, what are we willing and able to do based on our capacity?
And that's not a one-time question because capacity changes regularly.
Consistently. And even like, you know, different threats determine the difference in capacity. You know, need shifting, resources shifting, acquiring new skills shifts. The amount of daylight that exists in the season makes a difference in what your capacity is. And the question that, you know, we thought through next in doing this inventory of self and of family, started taking us to the place where we talked about like a broader community. And it's like, who all is involved? Like, what do they do? And like, how will they action? So when you're talking about capacity and threats and commitments and what needs to be actioned, all right, so like, how do we put people in motion? Like, who all is a part of this? And like, what are they gonna do? How are those, you know, skills and resources identified, put to work? And as we're thinking about the inventory, one thing to just keep in mind is that everyone needs to have buy-in. There are a number of you who are on this call who are parents, and And some of you will already make this your practice, but y'all know from being in parenting groups that people have different philosophies. But there are also people who are caring for elders. Bring the littles, bring the elders into conversation with you with these questions. They need to learn that not only they can articulate their needs, but that someone cares enough to ask in the first place. They need to understand that they are a part of shaping the commitments of like your pod or your family or what have you. That they have things that they can contribute. Like, whether folks are very young or whether they're, in their senior years, they have things to give. They have perspectives and questions that they'll raise that'll just completely reshape like what it is that you're willing and able perhaps to do. But oftentimes you don't get to the place like where you get to have that bit of genius because you don't ask. So do the asking. And, we talked about self, we talked about family, but then you can start talking about these things in community, beyond your household, beyond your pods, beyond the, the family that you've chosen or the families, that you're grafted into in other ways. Extend it into the community around you. And community could be activist groups. It could be, local communities. It could be digital communities. But these are things that you can ask in order to start to consider like what it is that you can do, because we're at the place where we're figuring out how we action these questions, these things. And with that, I will shift gears and hand the wheel. I'm bad with analogies. AnaYelsi, you go.
Take the baton. I just wanted to acknowledge Kristen's comment saying that they wish they had been taught this as a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that really resonated.
Yeah.
So we're about to get into the safety plan, which I think is why a lot of folks have joined us, is everyone's hearing so much conversation about make your post-election safety plan, safety plan, safety plan. And so folks are wondering, what does it mean? Why do I need one? How do I make one? Am I weird to want one? All these different questions. And so we're going to talk about the different types of safety plans, how you create one, why it's okay if you want to, and different people need different types, all these different things. But I want to start by talking about one kind of plan that is probably not getting made because everyone's going straight to sort of panic mode or worst case scenario mode. So a sort of general care plan, or a kind of that, again, the pause and breathe plan. I did mine today, and it took planning. Plan. So all last week up until yesterday has been the planning in terms of everything else we're going to talk about, where I was doing like, do I need go bags, and what kind of protests are we going to participate in if we need to, and what are we going to do if Trump is elected versus if Biden is elected, and how, like, all these different questions, and participating in different trainings and refresher courses and all these, really important work that needs to happen. But today I knew that I needed a pause and breathe day. And I also knew that and I know this because I regularly am the person who cannot pause and breathe, because I am someone who's like, we got to get out in the streets, we got to do stuff, we got to offer stuff, we got to make things happen. And so if I don't schedule it and create steps for how it's going to happen, it's not going to come to fruition. And so I woke up this morning and scheduled out how our day was going to go. And this included meals. So before my husband even woke up, lunch was taken care of. We're blessed enough that I was able to order it, had the resources to order us some food, and also get the supplies for us to make our dinner after we're done this evening. We have all of the supplies to make pizza ourselves. So we're going to do the dough and, add the pepperoni and sauce and all that. So it's going to be another activity for us to distract ourselves from news or social media, whatever it may be, that I can pay attention to tomorrow or later this evening. We did some adult coloring book time to do some art therapy. I enjoyed, as I mentioned, my rum and pineapple juice and some leftover Halloween candy. We're building some furniture together. Like, we've had activities all day going that have kept us focused on just being here in the home and together, and not on the election, and
Mhm.
not on making plans for what happens after the election, but just on caring for ourselves and for one another.
Mhm.
And it took making a plan to do that, because otherwise I would have gotten distracted and I would do what I'd normally do, which is be glued to my cell phone, reading everything everyone is saying about
Mhm.
what's happening as like votes are being tabulated and commentaries being made. Um, so creating a care plan for yourself and for your household where you can pause and just have a moment to say, as Alicia, she used the phrase at the beginning of our conversation, that today is not the last day. So take a day in between all of your other safety planning where you can just say, today is not the last day. We have time
Mhm.
to have a care day, or a couple of care days even, where we just are together and we have some moments of joy. We
Mhm.
sat together and colored. We're 30 something year old people who colored for like 2 hours this afternoon. It was lovely. Um, but it took planning, the same way anything else that's important in our life takes planning and intentionality. So create a general care plan for yourself and for your family.
Mhm.
Alicia, do you want to walk us through the medical and mental health safety plan?
Yeah. I mean, that intentionality that AnaYelsi just spoke of with these general care plans, again, words are hard, but these care plans that are happening at these different intervals also has to happen as it relates to like your health. And when we think about safety, it's like, what does it mean, like, for you to have your medications? And so we, in preparation of this, like went and like identified um, some resources that you could like implement in these medical and mental health safety plans. So one, like look at things like GoodRx and WellRx to get coupons for meds. The unfortunate reality is that healthcare in the U.S. is trash. There's no way to say it. And even when you are insured, and some of us aren't insured, things are astronomically high. But there are, programs that are out here that help significantly reduce the cost of your medication, whether you're insured or not. And so GoodRx and WellRx actually have prescriptions that you can put in for like different like pill amounts, like for your, physical and mental health meds. And they'll even like show you things like 90-day supply. Um, I'm not quite sure why, but the more pills you get, the cheaper it can be sometimes. Gotta love pharmaceutical companies. But you can actually do potential cost projections in developing a mental and medical safety plan using GoodRx and WellRx, as well as look at what some of the side effects might be with different types of medication if like your doctors haven't explained that to you. Um, One of the things that's super super important that like people might be missing out on in developing these plans is to create like a document or like handy cards for everyone in like your household and your family with people's medications, their allergies, and doctor information in the event of emergency of varying sorts. One of the things that's scary sometimes is that people don't know what meds their folks are on. And so when you have to like, receive medical attention or get like, mental health care, the people around you who are in community with you they need to know what you're on in order for you to be well, like as you're treated. Um, you should photocopy and digitize your insurance information if you have it, and include that with the information with your medications, your allergies, and doctor info. Um, Again, insurance, it's tricky in in the states, but one of the things that you may not be aware of, there are local hospitals that actually have they have like in-house care plans, right? Like it's not insurance, but like you have medical cards that can get you free or reduced care at like their community health centers or something. So that's something you should also check out. Work to identify like what your nearest health centers are, not just emergency rooms, because those can get really pricey, but look at urgent cares. Some urgent cares connected to like, big retailers like CVS and Walgreens are a little bit more expensive than some of the community health centers that run urgent care centers. So just be on the lookout for those. And I really can't stress this next point. As you're constructing a safety plan related to your health, you gotta get your shots. You have to get your flu shots. If you haven't done it already, like we're at the very beginning of flu season, and flu season compounded with COVID, it's a doozy. And we are gonna share some links with you a little bit later on, and AnaYelsi will share how you get a hold of this. But there are actually ways to find vaccines as well as like free to low cost like flu shots. So if you're uninsured or underinsured, there are ways for you to be able to get these resources, as well as coupons through things like GoodRx or WellRx that help significantly reduce the cost of these shots should you have to pay for them out of pocket. In the event of you needing COVID tests, the Health and Human Services Department of the government actually has like a really good national site of community-based testing sites that you can access, and we'll again give you that resource a little bit later on. Something, and this goes back to like what we had shared with you in the top end of this hour, in terms of you talking through things like with folks in your family, you need to think about and talk through the resources that you may potentially need medically. So I'll give you an example. I have, fibromyalgia, and having a chronic illness means that like my orientation to my body has changed like very quickly, including like what I can or cannot do like realistically without certain supports. And so I had to sit down with my doctor, during the summertime, and I'm like, look, it would be really helpful for me on the days where I can't walk to have a disability placard. So she gave me one that was a temporary one. It was only for like 6 months. And I was like, hey, we are living in a time where COVID alone is inspiring shutdowns, but we're also dealing with a very contentious election season. How about we extend that to whatever the maximum is in the event of an emergency? And she's like, you know what? That makes sense. So should you need, medical supplies, disability placards, paperwork for accommodations for work or school, you can have conversations as a part of your medical safety plan with your providers, or even with like people in your community who have like some backgrounds to help you figure out, what are those things and how do you get them in the event of, really anything happening, because we're also in hurricane season. And last but not least, in the medical safety section of tonight's programming, you should work out a health plan that you can follow if you're not able to connect with your providers. We have had the benefit of virtual connection, but you know what? Insurance lapses, offices are closed, people go on sabbatical. Sometimes providers like switch out and don't always have the foresight or the capacity really to articulate what's going on with them to those that they are caring for. So if you have the ability to work out long-term healthcare plans for things that you can do on your own, when people aren't available to you in ways that they once were. But some of this takes money and resources. And AnaYelsi is going to talk about like what it means to action a financial or resource plan.
All right. So we're not going to give a lot of specific directives in terms of a financial or resource plan. And the reason for that is everybody is dealing with very different financial realities. And I was actually talking with Alicia earlier this afternoon and saying that my financial reality, even this year versus where I was, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, are so vastly different. That the fact that I was able to do one of the things that I'm going to suggest to you is kind of a shock to my system. And so I recognize that not everyone can do everything. So one of the things you're going to hear, or you probably have seen in a lot of these little memes that have come out about creating, and we're going to get into this, creating go bags. We've said that phrase a few times, is people are talking about having some cash on hand, having some money out of the bank, so that you just have your money on you and available to you. And so one of the first things I want to name, and I want to just keep reiterating this no matter what really section of this conversation we're talking about, is we don't know what's going to happen this week, next week, a month from now.
2020 is throwing us so many curveballs.
This year has taught us anything, who the hell knows?
Wildfires, elections,
That is the tagline
hurricanes,
of 2020.
floods, all the things.
My thing that I would want people to walk away from with this discussion, not just the financial discussion, but the whole discussion we're having this evening, is you do what you need to do to feel like you have taken care of yourself and your family, your loved ones, and that you have managed your anxiety or your worry and your fear in a way that is good for you. And so if nothing happens and you go, oh, well, I took out, some money from the bank and it just sat in my home or in my wallet or in my go bag or whatever, and now I'm just going to bring it back to the bank in 6 months because nothing ever happened. But you know what? It gave me the comfort and peace of mind that it was there if we needed it. Then it served its purpose. You had comfort and peace of mind. And as far as I'm concerned, that's wonderful. That is it doing its job. So that being said, if you have access to some resources, some finances, whether that's $5, $25, 250, whatever, get what you feel you need to take care of yourself, to relieve some anxiety, to feel comfortable, and share what you are able to share. Everything that we're talking about this evening, and we said this at the front end, is with a mindset of being in community, of engaging in mutual aid, of taking care of each other. So get what you need, if you have it available to you, and share what you can if you have it available to share. Take out some cash if you can. Do with it whatever you need to do with it. I'm going to read you a quick little excerpt from one of the articles I've been reading, just to kind of explain to you why we're saying what we're saying. And so this is from Market Watch, talking about banks closing in response to the election. And it says, banks are considering closing branches across the country. Chase Bank plans to monitor the public's response to the election and is prepared to close branches if necessary. Chase's chief communications officer, Amy Bonatibus, says this. Truist, which was formed last year from the merger of SunTrust and BB&T, has closed a few of its more than 2,000 bank branches out of an abundance of caution in areas where other nearby businesses are temporarily shuttered, said Cynthia Montgomery, Truist Director of Communications. At Wells Fargo, a spokesperson said that the bank has boarded windows of a number of branches in select cities, and it goes on to talk about others. And the reason I'm reading that is to say, the point is not to fear monger and get you so scared that, like, oh, financial systems are shutting down, everything because of an election is going to be destroyed and be unlike anything we've ever seen. But if banks in your area, for whatever reason, are closing, particularly if, like us, you're folks of color, if you live in certain communities where you have businesses that are more likely to shutter, more likely to close down because they're considered areas where protest is more likely to happen, which means you're less likely to have access to banks without having to travel outside of your comfort zone. Then you're less likely to have access to your money. Which if something happens and you need to care for yourself or care for your family, you might find yourself in a situation that you're uncomfortable with. So having some money on hand might alleviate some of that fear or apprehension. So we don't need to make it this big, like, apocalyptic scenario for us to say, hey, get a little money, if it makes you feel better. I did it. I know Alicia and Alexis are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it offers comfort and security to us and our household.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that I'll say is like part of the reason that Alexis and I are able to action some of the things that we're doing, like as a part of our safety and our wellness plans, is because people have shared what they had.
Yes.
Like we have friends, you know, who are very invested like in our wellness, who have gifted us, you know, and just like loved on us like in very tangible ways. And so that means that we have extra money to do things in different parts of our plan, including take out, you know, X amount of dollars should we need.
Yeah.
Because that's what it means to share what you can. People shared what they could.
It feels luxurious to be like, oh, we have extra. And that's what I meant by like, it's a challenge to my identity and like a thing I couldn't have done, you know, 5 or 10 years ago to have this money. But if we have it and we have the security and we can take care of ourselves, we can take care of people in our community that we care about. That is a gift and a blessing to be able to offer, like be able to offer aid.
And remember, aid isn't always financial.
No.
Like, you know, if you got a 20-pound bag of rice, guess what? You can, like, you know, take little quart bags that you got from the dollar store, scoop out and pass it on. Like your neighbors may not have. Like that's part of what mutual aid is. It's like we have things. Like sometimes it's money, but sometimes it's resources of varying sorts. And what we have, we have. It's not just that I have. And so, yeah. Share the rice, share the lentils.
Yeah. So get what you can, share what you can, take out whatever you need to feel like you're ready for whatever situation might come up that you're concerned about, and have it available to yourself and to your household. It doesn't mean that you're doomsday prepping in the worst case scenario, but it's it's the reality, especially again, if you're living with in marginalized communities or have marginalized identities. And the reality is it's more frightening to go into unknown areas and unknown communities as things in your own area are shut down or unavailable to you.
Especially because of the targeting that people have experienced. Right. But one thing, you know, that this reminds us that there is sometimes a need to create an emergency exit plan.
Yes.
There are some of us who live in places and or do work in such a way that it is no longer safe for us to stay in our homes, and we need emergency exit plans. This is something that we are committed to get into in detail a little bit more. People who need to create emergency exit plans tend to already have it. You know when you need a plan to get out. Especially those of us who are committed to organizing and activism work. But one thing that we wanted to mention for the sake of this call is that you can play a critical part in someone's emergency exit plan. There are people, because of the ways that they're dedicated to call in for justice and equity, need safe houses. They need places that they can go and seek shelter. With people who are going to love and care for them and like allow for them to take their rest, and you might be able to offer that. There are ways, again, that you can share resources of varying sorts to make sure that people have what they need if they need to get like out of Dodge. You know, we can, you know, get real collectivist. You may have an extra car. You may have a line of credit. There are things that you can do for people as they're activating their emergency exit plans to help ease that process for them to be able to safely transition out of one space to another. And sometimes, honestly, that is giving them the accountability. Just being there, you know, as a person like who cares for them, letting them know, like, I see these threats to your safety. These threats are tangible, like you are not imagining these threats that are there. And so how do we together stay in community as we talk about what it means to safely extract you from this one place where you are under threat, where you can get to a place where that threat is no longer an issue.
And I would add, if you're someone who is offering to be a part of somebody's emergency exit plan, specificity is such a gift. So somebody actually reached out to me this morning to offer to be a part of Matt and I's emergency exit plan because they live nearby, but outside of DC, which is such a generous offer. But what I really appreciated was the specificity of their offer, because they didn't just say, hey, if you ever need to, you can come stay at our house, which is so generous. But sometimes you feel like, can I really, or can I take you up on that? Or like, what does that mean? But they were like, you can come, this is what that means. And hey, just so you know, this is how active like ICE is in my area, because they know that we're both immigrants. Hey, this is how active Trump supporters are in my area. This is this, like, these are all the things that you should consider if you take me up on my offer. We have a vehicle if you want us to come and get you, because Matt and I don't have a vehicle. Like, it was the specificity that made it such a gift of their offer. Even if we don't take them up on it, it really let me know what it means when they're offering something. So if you're going to be if you're going to reach out to somebody, if you can give a little bit of detail, that would be an incredible gift.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there are 2 more safety plans that we want to touch base on. And I think for some of us, they are interlocked. They are spiritual safety plans and joy plans. Because part of like your wellness and your safety is like understanding, like, how will you spiritually engage this moment? Like, how will you create in like your meeting making? Whether that is finding, spiritual resources, meditations, prayers, religious services, devotionals, prayer cards, like a million different resources in order for you to spiritually be well and to feel grounded as we journey through this season. Because of people having different needs, again, like there are a number of different directions that we can point people to, and we can better do that later on. But that is something that you need to be thinking through. It's like, what do I need to be spiritually well? What do the people in my family and in my community need to be spiritually well? And how do we action that? And then joy, make space for joy. Like, safety, like part of being safe, part of being secure is like making space for like happiness and the things that like make your heart glad. It's creating art, it's making music, it's like listening, it's getting your hands dirty, planting, drinking, engaging in other types of imbibery. I'm making up words, it's fine. Like, what is gonna make your heart glad? At the end of the day, like, it doesn't make sense for us to talk about like all these other elements of safety if you don't have the thing that's gonna allow you to get through, to cultivate resilience. You need joy. Oftentimes, folks quote Mariam Kaba and speaking about how hope is a discipline, but joy is also something that we have to work to cultivate. And so as you're thinking through all of these different things that you can do, think about how you're going to make space for joy. Even little pockets. It doesn't have to be something that takes you an hour to do. 5 minutes. How do you do something that's for you, that gives your spirit light?
So this takes us to the idea of stocking up, which you probably have heard a lot about, of going and get what you need. People keep saying that get 2 weeks worth of stuff if you need it. So again, reiterating, and I keep saying this, it doesn't, some folks are like, this is silly. Oh, Kristen just said, oh, so true. Joy is a discipline. So just affirming what you said, Alicia. But with stocking up, I just want to reiterate again that I don't think it's going to be like Mad Max in the streets in the next 24 hours.
Chances are it's not.
Probably not. I'm just going to put that out there. And I also think that it benefits no one, and it engages in a myth of scarcity to go out and clear our shelves of all of their resources in grocery stores, of more than we need, and then leaving nothing for others. So that is in no way what I am suggesting right now. But this week, for example, Matt and I did go to the grocery store and get a little bit more dry goods than we normally do. And got 1 extra pack of toilet paper, even though we knew we had a little bit left at home. that sort of thing. Got one extra container of milk so we could freeze it just in case,
Mm-hmm.
and got some bottled water. Um, things to make sure that if we need to be home for the next week or two, we're pretty much good, and we could make soups. We could make things out of the dry goods
Mm-hmm.
that aren't going to go bad in the next 2 weeks versus the usually like the produce and stuff that we have in the house
Mm-hmm.
that we would have to replenish every few days. Um, so we didn't go full, doomsday prepper. um,
You don't have your bucket full of stuff?
we didn't. But we did go ahead and get some groceries and house supplies to make sure that we could be in the house, especially because we're here in DC, for example, and there's talk of um, certain, I don't like the word militia because as far as I'm concerned, we're talking about terrorists,
Terrorists.
domestic terrorists, but um, coming into to town and stuff like that. And I don't want to be out there as a brown woman.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather be home and not having to go outside. Um, and so do that if you can. If you can gas up the car now and not have to worry about it for the next week or so. If you can get your meds refilled now and not have to worry about it, it's a good
Mm-hmm.
thing to do. If you don't necessarily have the funds, but you're going, I want to get the groceries and I want to get the house supplies,
Mm-hmm.
or the gas card or whatever it may be. There are food banks and pantries. There are um, buy nothing groups and
Mm-hmm.
mutual aid groups on social media, on Facebook. If you're not familiar with the buy nothing or mutual aid groups, if you literally just type in the phrase buy nothing mutual aid and the name of either your neighborhood or a nearby neighborhood, they should
So
pop
many
up.
things.
They're just
So
about
many things.
there. Buy
Google, Facebook.
Yes. Buy nothing mutual aid. So the buy nothing groups is mostly to get um like home goods and tangible products and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
Mutual aid, it goes a bit larger than that. So people
Mm-hmm.
might give funds and resources. They might offer Uber rides. They might um like it's a larger source of things. It's all done on good faith. It's about community sourcing and taking care
Mm-hmm.
of one another. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to make sure that everyone has what they need, regardless of what's going on with the government, regardless of what your immediate ability is to care for yourself and your household. The community will take care of itself
Mm-hmm.
together. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so stock up on some of these items if it gives you the comfort of knowing that you have what you need,
Mm-hmm.
especially again, if you are living in a body that has marginalized identities and you are nervous and don't want to be out and about
Mm-hmm.
because you know what? It's fucking scary and you'd rather be home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's okay. And that's reason enough.
It is. It is. It absolutely is. And it's okay and honestly quite perhaps necessary to
Yeah.
buddy up to do these things in the daytime because, there are threats that are credible. And, I saw a video earlier today that, disquieted me of like a group of Black and brown folks who were out and about just trying to live their lives and go about their business. And they were cut, like their vehicles were cut off. And so it's okay to like to do things like in a pod and like with people who, have been quarantining, to be able to do these things together. Do a mini caravan, right? Go get your supplies together, split the cost. That way your households aren't, incurring like, charges that you can't sustain. There are ways to go at this.
Yeah. If you don't
Um,
want to be exposed, like forget big, huge, like government unrest and all of this stuff, which is absolutely real concerns. But if
mhm,
you don't want to be exposed to people who, because of all that stuff, are emboldened to be like more aggressive in their like queer phobic and racist behavior and white supremacy,
mhm,
all these different things that just end up resulting in you being traumatized and you
mhm,
not being able to do basic things like grocery shopping or getting money out of the bank or whatever it may be. If these different actions that we're laying out help you alleviate some of that, then they're
mhm,
worth doing.
mhm.
Forget whatever else might happen. Alicia,
Exactly.
I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
And so the next thing that we're talking about is actually good, definitely in this season, but really in any emergency. Creating a go bag. Like if something happens and like you just need to like pick up and go, or you need to be able to access something like super quickly to get through the emergency, like you need supplies. You know, what ends up happening, and we've seen this happen, you know, a few times during, you know, the COVID outbreak. We've seen it happen around election time. We've seen it with natural, you know, disasters and emergencies because of them. You try to go to the store, everything's wiped out. And then you're freaking out because you're like, crap, 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 crap. How do I get a hold of X, Y, and Z? You do it now, you don't have to worry about it. And a lot of these things, quite frankly, can be brought at the dollar store, like if you're on a budget. And or again, you can split the cost with people. Like if you're working with a pod, if you're working with a group of people, you know, some of these things you can buy in bulk and then split the cost between you. So we've talked a number of times about meds. Get your meds if you can, like seriously. You know, there's so many things that happen to us like physiologically, you know, when we're off of our meds. If you can like have these in your go bag, like a few days supply, at least 72 hours, squirrel it away, put it in your go bag. That way, like you don't have to like go crawling through trying to find like your pill holder. You have it set up. IDs and important documents. Also make copies of these things. Put them in a safe bag specifically that's waterproof. We've talked about cash. Get a first aid kit. You can find one for very, very cheap. Your phone, I mean, we have our phones with us all the time, but make sure that you have chargers. And it's a good idea just in general to maybe get a charger that's also like a solar charger. Like if you're, you know, we have a number of friends because of the hurricanes that have like happened in the southern part of the US, found themselves without power for several days. Those who had several chargers, solar chargers, were able to put the chargers out in the daytime and then have enough to power up batteries, tablets, laptops, etc. So it's just a good thing to have in your go bag. Snacks and bottled water. It's okay if some of those snacks aren't the most healthy, because again, joy is a thing. So if you need to throw a Snickers in your go bag, that's cool. They're also like high calorie, and you know, and
A little Milky Way is better. I'm just saying.
lies. Welcome to Eights Being Eights over Candy. We're your hosts, AnaYelsi and Alicia. But yeah, like throw snacks that are going to sustain you, but as well as make your mouth happy. Permanent markers are like super important to label, you know, things around whatever, as well as, if when need be, and we'll talk about this, to write important numbers and information like on your body, because it's permanent. It doesn't wash off easy. Change your clothes. You want to make sure that like your clothes, that you have a couple of layers. So if you can include thermals, like we're entering winter months, cooler temperatures in different parts of wherever, get thermals. And then also like have, you know, lighter layers, t-shirts, wool socks are always good, comfortable shoes. Like don't try to be cute in your go bag. Like if you can walk like 900 miles in those sneakers, but they're like ugly, it's cool. Get those.
The hell? 900 miles. Sorry.
900, this is one that seems a little bit random, but it's a really, really good idea to have in a bag. It's an emergency blanket. Again, this goes with a change in temperature, as well as if there is like some type of emergency happening around you and you need to make yourself highly visible. Emergency blankets are super cool in that they're orange on one side and they're like a metallic color on the other. That's for, you know, cooling and insulation, as well as to make yourself highly visible in the case of an emergency. And they're like super cheap. And then critical contact information. This goes back to like, you know, sharing all the stuff like with the people like within your group. Like, you know, you need to have information for your doctors, your therapists, the people who are in your pod. And so AnaYelsi and I actually talked about this. So sometimes we think about pods as people who are, you know, directly in contact with us. And it's definitely a part of it. But there are also people who are in your world, particularly those of us who do different types of like work, specifically justice work, where it's important that certain people, if anything happens like to and or with you, that they're alerted. And so AnaYelsi is a part of my pod. If anything ever happens to me, if there's ever like, you know, someone challenging me in any way, shape, or form, people around me know to alert her, because there are ways that she can like ring social media alarms and draw attention to what's happening to me, even though we don't live close to one another. And so it's okay to have friends like that who are a part of like your community, who are part of like this inner circle that surrounds you, because the information about like your wellness can be shared with them and then they know what to do. Last but not least, other emergency contacts.
Yes. All right, we're almost done. I promise.
Almost.
We should be able to do this within the 90 minutes. So I'm going to blow through this really quickly because it's very similar to the go bag. But one of the things we know that is going to happen is some of y'all are going to be like me, who are saying, yeah, we're making safety plans, we're making exit plans, we're thinking about taking care of ourselves and our household. But you know what? We're still about being in the streets. We're still about protesting. We're still about, you know, civil disobedience. We're still about challenging whatever the heck is going on in whatever moment in time is happening. And we want to be prepared. We can't do a whole direct action training right now, but there are a couple of things we wanted to say really quickly that are, you know, somewhat related to what we've done today, to just let you know, if you're in the midst of doing all these different things, but you hear, hey, you know, someone rings the alarm and says, get out in the streets now, we need more people. And you decide, you know what, I want to be one of those people. We wanted to name a few things for you. So Alicia walked you through a go bag, but if you're going to be in the streets, there's the go bag and then there's the protest bag. So a lot of the same things are going to be in your protest bag, or in your protest bag that were in your go bag. Then there's some difference. I'm going to name them really quickly. You want water, you want face mask, but you want multiple face masks.
Plural.
With an S. Have at least 2. And the reason I'm saying this is, if you, especially if you're someone who, depending on the level of risk you decide you're willing to engage in, you may get pepper sprayed or tear gassed. If you do, and it saturates your mask, it is going to be incredibly uncomfortable or debilitating, or you can't continue to wear the mask. You're going to want to remove it and put a fresh one on. So make sure you have at least one more with you. Hand sanitizer, snacks, again, a couple, at least a day or 2 of the meds that you take regularly, particularly if you're someone who's willing to risk arrest. Your phone charger, memorize the number of your remote buddy, and we'll talk about what that means. Buddies, if you have more than one with an S, and legal support and or your attorney, if you have your own attorney. Memorize it and write it on your body. If you're willing to risk harm and you're someone who's really like getting in the midst of things, a helmet, get goggles. Be careful with the kind of goggles that you get. You want to make sure that it actually is enclosing around your face. You want to
creating a seal.
And creating a seal. Otherwise, the tear gas or whatever is going to get trapped inside, and that's going to be horrible for you. Earplugs, first aid kit. You might want walkie-talkies. These are a few things you would want in a protest bag.
And the walkies are important because, unfortunately, you know, one of the methods that police tend to use in protests is jamming phones. And so you need the ability to communicate with people around you as you're, you know, protesting safely.
So that's what you would want in a protest bag, you know, give or take a few things. But those are some of your go-tos. If you're like me, really quickly, and you're not a US citizen, there are some other things to consider if you're an immigrant, depending on your documentation status. So I'm not going to go through that right now, but I just want to name that and make sure that you're talking to somebody about that before you go out in the streets, because that's incredibly important to think through. before you go out in the streets, identify who you're working with.
Mm-hmm.
Know why you're going out there, because not every
Please.
call to be out in the streets is a call you need to answer.
It surely is
And
not.
sometimes people are just going out there all willy-nilly, just being like, let's go do something. And there's
Having no
no
demands,
damn
no
purpose
safety plans, no marshals, no first aid, like
there.
nothing.
Um, so know who's organizing and know what it's about. What are the goals? What's the purpose? Why are we out here?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Figure out who your protest buddies are. That includes who's going to be out there in the streets with you and who's at home, who's your remote buddy or buddies, who's
Mm-hmm.
looking out for you. Decide what your rules of engagement are. How are you going to act and conduct yourself in those streets? So your levels of risk you're willing to take, your levels of comfort. I mentioned that, like how much harm or risk are you willing to put yourself in?
And what
Um,
role you're going to occupy, because
yes,
like in the streets, like not everyone does the same thing. There are
absolutely.
people who are medics, right? Like there are people who are serving as chaplains, you know. There are folks who are, you know, marshals, people who are doing security, folks who are like supply runners. There's so many different things that you can do at a direct action, like at a protest,
Mhm.
and understanding like what your commitments are in that space is like really crucial, because it lets you be able to like coordinate with people in a way to help that action like go well.
And it alleviates your sense of responsibility when something goes
Mm-hmm.
down and you go, am I supposed to act right now? You'll know you don't have to be responsible for doing
Mm-hmm.
something in that moment. And then know your meetup spot for with whoever your buddy is in that space. If you get separated, know where you're supposed to be when you're going to find each other so that you can make
Mm-hmm.
sure one another is safe. With that, I'm going to pass it to Alicia.
But for everybody who's out in the streets, there are those of us who are at home. So like one of the biggest misconceptions that people have about like direct action and protest is that you have to be in the streets. For many of us, you know, for a myriad of reasons, it's not possible. Sometimes that's because of us having chronic illness and being disabled. Sometimes it's because of commitments in terms of caregiving. But you know, sometimes it's work or resources, or really you can't afford to take a risk of being out in the streets for different reasons. Anywho, it's possible to be like super engaged in justice seeking work from the comfort and security of your house. Um, so one way is, and we've mentioned this a few times, now we're going to tell you what it is. You can be a remote support buddy for someone. So someone who's out in the street protesting needs somebody who's not in the field, who knows the protesters' emergency contact info, medical info, and any responsibilities that they need to, you know, engage in if that person gets injured or arrested. They know what to do if something goes down. And the responsibilities that these people have to one another are to be in contact before they go, while they're out, and then when they make it safely home. Um, but in addition to being this type of like, you know, remote support, there are other opportunities that you can engage in. One thing is caregiving, right? For the folks who are out in the streets, like somebody's got to take care of the puppies and the babies and the elders. And, you know, sure, you throwing on masks because we're in COVID times, but regardless, like there's always a need for caregivers and in protest work. There are people who need to do food and supply prep. Sometimes that means like actually making food, but other times it's actually just doing like, you know, food procurement. One of the things that I had done with some local protests, I actually, you know, would do check-ins with protest leaders every day and ask like, hey, what are your supply needs for the day or for the week? And then I would go with money that like, you know, that I'd raise, because fundraisers are also a part of, you know, this movement work. But I'd go with money that we'd raise, and then I'd do all the supply ordering. And that brings us to the runners. They're the people who will go and take the supplies that were picked up and then drop them off at coordinated sites in order to be dispersed. And so sometimes that's water, sometimes it's, you know, stuff for the medics, sometimes, you know, it's, you know, extra poster making supplies. But there are people who like literally all they do is like they drive back and forth, you know, making sure that like the people on the ground are like fully resourced in whatever ways they need. Um, but that resourcing happens when you have those folks who do do logistics. There are some people who are like super gifted administratively and strategically can see what all is needed and can coordinate with people on the ground who, quite frankly, sometimes aren't the most organized of folks. And so there are people who are in their homes, like who'll sit and be like, all right, so here's what I'm hearing from what you're saying. Here are the supplies that relate to that need. Here are the other resources, like here, you know, is coordination, you know, with, you know, jail support and, you know, all these other groups. We're going to do, you know, conversations with media and X, Y, and Z. That's what they do. So you have people running logistics. You have people who also do remote security support. Sometimes it's necessary for people to listen to police scanners and to report that information back to folks on the ground in order for them to know which ways to marshal the crowd, as well as to how to dispatch medic teams. And that happens, you know, online. There are scanners, as well as sometimes, you know, you have to buy scanners when police start switching channels on you. And then last but not least, people sometimes like give social media a bad rap, but like social media amplification is crucial. I cannot stress this enough. It's part of the reason why, like, you see like the government trying to like shut down things like TikTok, or people like, you know, complaining about Twitter. It's because it's so effective. Like, people on the ground can take videos, and that's how we know that there are, you know, protests shifting and violence that's being enacted by the police and things that are escalating. And your job sitting at home is to like retweet, like, hey, we need this here. Hey, this is happening here. Like, because you can do things at home that people on the ground can't. And you can connect the pieces in order to make sure that people on the ground have the most up-to-date, viable information that's going to keep them safe. There's so much that you can do from home. Like, I mean, some of this I've had to learn just because, you know, the hand that life has dealt me like over the last couple of years, and like the development of my chronic illness means that I've had to figure out how to go from being in the streets to being effective from my house. But there are so many things you can do. And it's actually kind of exciting. I got really, really pumped that I got to tell you that you could like be super effective, like in sitting in your computer chair.
Yes.
But that all being said, we've said a mouthful. We're coming to the close of our time together. In the same way that we began you with an exercise that was grounding, we wanted to leave you with another exercise, you know, on the way out. But this one focuses on your breath. So if you feel comfortable, just take a deep breath in, release it. Take another deep breath in, release. Take one more, and release it as I speak these words over us. Remember your breath. Marvel at the life it gives your body. Then reflect on its ability to fuel a voice powerful enough to challenge powers, engage hearts, unseat principalities, and level institutions whenever you exhale.
We are so grateful to all of you for spending the last 90 minutes with us. There are a few things we wanted to leave you with. First of all, there's so much that we covered here,
So
and
much.
we honestly barely scratched the surface, and we recognize that we barely scratched the surface and how overwhelming a lot of this can be. The reason we did this in the first place is we knew there were so many little kind of info sheets and memes out there that already might have felt overwhelming. And then this might feel overwhelming. And so we're constantly learning and trying to take in information. And we want to offer you more ways to take in information and learn with us. And for us to kind of get where we need to be together. So one of the ways we're going to do that is to start creating some resources for you. And we're going to make them available through En Conjunto. which is the organization that I'm the founder of. Alicia is on our ILE team, which is the leadership team. And Conjunto's website is where we're going to make the resources available once we've compiled them, and we'll do that shortly. But when they are available, we'll make that known via our social media on Twitter and on Facebook. So just keep an eye out if you're not following. And Conjunto, if you don't know what I'm saying right there, it's 2 words, N-E-N, Conjunto, C-O-N-J-U-N-T-O. You can search for that on Facebook. And just keep an eye out, and you'll see the resources list where we'll give you everything we talked about, from WellRx to little information on what to put in your go bag, to articles we mentioned, to videos to watch. So it's all compiled in one place as you're trying to take in all of this information. One of the other things I want to recommend is, this is a constant learning process. So I mentioned, being immigrants and going out in the streets. I'm an organizer and have been an organizer for over a decade. I'm still learning. I did a refresher course last week, specifically for people who are immigrants doing direct action in DC, so that we would know, if we get arrested in DC, what would happen, where we would go, how we would be processed, et cetera, specific to the DC area. So there is always something to learn. There's always someone to teach you something new. And those things are often free. So follow different organizations. I learned that through Sanctuary DMV. And so I just want to encourage you to follow all these different groups and see what kind of webinars and workshops and things they're putting out there that can help you equip yourself to make sure that you have all of this knowledge that you need. And then finally, one of the things that we're going to put out there for you is a series in December where we're going to delve deeper into a lot of the stuff that we just scratched the surface on tonight. So we did, this little bit of information about what to do if you're out in the streets. We'll do, for example, a full workshop on direct action, like protesting. We'll do a full workshop, for example, on alternatives to calling the police.
And delving into what your commitments are. One of the things that we didn't talk about that a number of people are having conversations about is like, what does nonviolence means, and like, what methods of defense am I comfortable with? That comes to like identifying like what your commitments are. And nonviolence means different things to different people. And so we can delve into that in these December talks.
So we're going to do a series in December. When that's announced, you'll hear about it if you're following me on social media, if you're following Alicia on social media, and if you're following En Conjunto on social media. There's 3 ways to find out about it. Just make sure
follow us all.
Following us. We'll put how to follow us in the comments if you don't know how. But we have really enjoyed this. We'll stay on for a couple of minutes if you don't mind, Alicia. Does anyone have any questions of something we didn't answer? You can put it in the comments right now if you have any burning questions.
Yeah.
Gotten to.
And know that sharing is caring. Part of the reason why we did a live, you can share this with folks. If you found this to be helpful, by all means, share it within your community. The part of the reason why we name things like dates is to have like a benchmark, right? Like, we know that we're having this conversation because of the election in the United States. There are other elections that have happened in the same week, so we want to be specific about that. But there are so many things that you're able to do just in different types of emergencies. And we just want this resource here for the community should they need.
Yeah. While I'm waiting and seeing if anyone asks any questions, I'm going to read some of the comments that we might have missed. Sandy said, yes, please name that this is not the same risk for immigrants to be out. Yeah, depending on your identity, being out in the streets as a form of protest definitely carries different risks. Austin said, sorting out which information is viable and trustworthy during an action is so important. Yes. And then Carrie said, thank you, with a lot of hearts. And Austin said, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any questions right now. put them later. We'll keep them in mind as we're planning the December series. But that is it for tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you in December.
Bye.